What's going on, everybody? Animal fans, welcome back. This is another edition of the Animal Pakcast. I'm your host. My name is Joseph Percher. Alongside me, as always, Gary G6 Turner. And then joining us today, world's strongest man competitor and the newest animal athlete, Rob Kearney. Rob, thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
So you are fresh off, just like 2 days off a big time event. So you just broke your own American record for the log press. So tell us about that. How was that over the weekend?
It was awesome. I initially broke the American log press record in April of 2019. It was previously held by Rob Oberst for actually like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And it was set at 465. And then I brought it up to 471 last year. And then was contacted by the guys at World's Ultimate Strongman, and they were putting on this massive feature strength series due to the coronavirus and everything being shut down. And they wanted to bring some strength fans some cool stuff to watch. So I got asked to go for the log press record pretty much right after the Arnold this year. And fortunately, it went really well on Saturday. So my training leading up to it was great.
Yeah.
I hit the 475. And to be honest, I feel like I probably had like 485, 490 in me that day.
I was just going to say, they asked you about it. I watched it live. It was live on ESPN, which was really cool to see. Like, not one of these, ESPN 8, the Ocho, like the main ESPN HD channel. And the guys that were commentating, again, I'm not super familiar with Strongman. I know that it's guys that were involved in the sport. But one of the commentators, made that comment that it looked like, you had plenty left in the tank. What do you think you had in you on that day? And then, long term, what do you think you have in you as far as smashing this record again?
Yeah, I think on the day I would have been good for like 485 to 490. So in that like 220, 222 kilo mark.
Yeah.
The world record right now is 228, held by Savickas. So that's 502 pounds. So I think, honestly, within the next year or sooner, I'll be knocking on the door of the world record.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, though, but so Rob Oberst had it before you, and the guy that currently holds the world record, these guys are much heavier than you, right? Like much larger humans than you, right?
Yeah, I'm a tiny bitch compared to that.
So what is that like? Because you're, I've seen you, and then I see some of these other guys that are like dinosaurs that are, and you're right there with them in the top 10 in the world's strongest man. So how does that ever like creep into your mind as far as doubt, or when you were first getting started, was that a doubt for you that you were much smaller than these guys? And I don't mean to say much smaller, like you're a small dude, but these guys are massive.
Yeah, no, to be honest, it didn't. I've been working my way through this sport. I started this sport 11 years ago, and which is crazy to think. I was 17 years old and I was competing under 200 pounds. So I never thought I'd be even at that level to begin with.
Yeah.
And now, stepping into the contest, I'm regularly the smallest competitor. For those that don't know, I'm like 5'10". Right now I'm a little heavy. I'm about 290 to 295. Typically I compete in that 280, 285 range. And I compete against guys like Thor, who's 6'9" and 440 when he steps up to compete. Oberst, when he had the log press record, Oberst is like 6'7", 6'8", and he's also right around, 420, 440 pounds. So it never really bugs me. It's not annoying. The only thing that sucks is, I'm horrible at throwing events, so I'm always going to lose a keg toss.
Yeah.
Everything else I can keep up with. So, for me, it's more of a badass feeling when I know that I'm holding these records against these guys and, definitely holding my own against the big boys.
Now, and this is a total novice opinion, but, we watched you on Rogan, and obviously you have an athletic background. And I almost wonder if you being smaller in some of these events kind of aids you, because you're kind of, you're more agile than some of these guys that are just huge. Like, how do you feel like your athletic background, because you were a competitive cheerleader, right?
Yeah,
so I have two questions for you. So, one, how do you go from competitive cheerleading to wanting to lift and pull and throw heavy shit? And then two, do you feel like that athletic background has helped you or like kind of molded you at all, like moving into Strongman?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I played offensive line under football.
Okay.
And then in the winter season, I was competitive cheerleading. So I did a little bit of both. And, like I said, I'm small, right? So like even for an O lineman, I'm tiny.
Yeah.
So I found out pretty quickly, like I wasn't really going to go anywhere and play in college and at a high level anyway. So fortunately I found the weight room. And I think for me, I really loved like the individual aspect of it. Team sports were great. And, you get that camaraderie and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But there's something about what we do, in strongman and powerlifting and bodybuilding that it's like, it's all on you. If you put the work in training and you show up and you compete and you perform, you take all the glory. If you fuck up, it's your fault.
Yeah.
I like that pressure. I think it's what motivates me. It drives me. Every time I'm in the gym training and especially competing, I like having that pressure on me, and to bring things back to the athleticism. And I think it definitely helps me. I think being small, we look at things like recovery. It's a lot easier for me to recover in between events and in between days during contests. Because the thing people don't realize, like World's Strongest Man, that's like a 4 or 5 day contest for us.
Yeah.
Like it's brutal. And but for me being smaller, I can recover a lot easier than some of these big guys. And then, I have great foot speed. So that helps out a lot. I think, obviously I'm known for the log press, but we look at other events like the yoke walk. I've only lost that event twice in my career.
Yeah.
I've beaten Savickas. I've beaten Nick Best, all the best at that event. I've beat them.
Yeah.
So I think, a lot of it comes down to me being a fan of the sport and a student of the sport when I was just getting into it, because I studied and I obsessed over learning different techniques and switching things up to make sure it worked for me. And I think that's what got me to this level.
Sounds like me and Joe with bodybuilding. It's funny you said that about recovery and like how, some of these bigger guys, they don't recover as well. I had a buddy who was backstage at the Arnold Strongman competition. He was actually handing out awards, but they had their final competition, whatever they were doing that event that day. He said, dude, backstage, these guys had oxygen tanks and they were just like gasping for air. I think it might have been Zavickas, who was really, really heavy because he leaned down a lot recently, right? He said he's only about 6'2", and he was like 400. And they said he had an oxygen tank and he was just sucking on the mask. And it's a whole different world back there with these guys.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not one of those guys.
That's good, though.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
thing.
obviously an exception. Like this year at the Arnold, the iconic event the past 2 years is the Wheel of Pain.
Yeah.
And, there's not a
that
single
Conan wheel that they built, right? The road.
Yeah. It is so badass and so cool and so fucking painful.
Yeah.
And there's not a single one of us that just, they had a chair right at the finish line wherever, like they were pretty much somebody who's following you with a chair the entire way. Because once that whistle blew and that 60 seconds was up, you can't stand. Like your head's down, you're constricting your breathing, and everything was really, really tough. So that's like the one event that was the exception where I did take some oxygen. But typically I'm good. I'll huff and I'll huff. I'll take a seat for a little bit. Within a few minutes, I'm back up, ready to go and ready for the next event.
And one of the things too, like you mentioned, you've been doing this for 10 or 11 years now at this point, I'd have to think that you not carrying around all that extra weight that some of these guys do, it's going to play into your longevity. So, like you said, maybe when you got right into it, you didn't have aspirations of being like a top 10 guy or whatever the case is. But at this point, it's almost like you're just going to be able to outlast some of these guys and rise to the top,
Yeah, and that's, my plan right now is to stay at this level as long as I can. I'm having a blast doing it.
Yeah.
It's so much freaking fun.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to kind of ride this wave until I either, totally shit the bed or, something else happens.
Now, you guys say super, super active. Like, one of the first calls that we got on, you were telling me, what the plan schedule was for this year before, the COVID-19 situation. So you just set the log press record again. What's next for you? Is there anything is your schedule starting to clarify a little bit for you guys in Strongman?
Not at all. I think the cool thing is Strongman's getting a lot more popular, which is fantastic. And that gives us athletes a lot more opportunity to compete. you know, when you and I talked earlier, it was I had my schedule pretty much planned from January to November of this year.
Yeah.
And I was competing between, I think my plan was between 11 and 13 contests in 11 months. But, you know, the thing is, if in this sport, if you're not Thor, if you're not Martins, if you're not Brian, and if you're not Maciej Kieliszkowski, you need to compete a lot. Because now essentially we have three major federations in the heavyweight pro strongman circuit. We have Giants Live, which is the world's strongest man qualifying tour. We have the Arnold International Series, which is the only way to get at the Arnold Strongman Classic. And now coming out of Dubai is World's Ultimate Strongman, who just put on the Feats of Strength series.
Yeah.
So, you look at like the Arnold, the International Series, there's 6 to 7 contests right there.
Yeah.
And the only way to get to the Arnold Strongman Classic is to either win one of those Arnold International shows, or you go to every single one and you accumulate points throughout the series.
Yeah.
You know, then Giants Live, the only way to get to World's Strongest Man is a top 3 placing at Giants Live. So if you're constantly taking 4th, 5th, 6th, you need to keep going back to those shows. And those are all over the UK. There's one in the US usually. So it really is just a lot of competing, you know, but fortunately it's a lot of fun. And, you know, they tend to try to keep us somewhat safe, but they also need to put on a show and make us lift heavy stuff.
Yeah. And
that's
also,
kind of an issue that we're
go ahead, Gary. Go ahead.
That's kind of the opposite issue that we're having in professional bodybuilding. Me and Joe always talk about how they we don't think that the pro bodybuilders compete enough. The guys that are coming up in the ranks, they're holding out for one show and then they're like one and done. Where back in the day, these guys competed at, you know, 4, 5, 6, you know, sometimes more shows a year. You know, to 1, to get their name out, 2, to try to accumulate some money, and 3, for the chance that they can qualify, cumulative points to qualify for the Olympia. Whereas, you know, nowadays, if one person, you know, if you win a small show, not saying that that's not hard, obviously it's really hard to do, but they'll hold out for the entire Olympia, when in reality, yes, they're qualified for the Olympia, but they're probably not a contender to win the Olympia. They should be competing in more shows, I feel, like you're saying, unless you're the top 3 in the sport, and you would know if you were, then you should be on the stage, you know, doing more, I feel.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing that I always go back to as well is, you know, like I said, I've been doing the sport for 11 years, and I'm still learning every single time I compete.
Yeah.
And that's how, like, I started my career when I was still an amateur competing in the 200 and the 231 weight class. I competed a lot, and that competition experience is invaluable. And that still holds true even at the pro level. That's why I choose to compete so much. I necessarily don't need to, but you know, even at this level, competing against the top 10 to 15 guys at every single contest, I'm still learning and getting better every single show. And it goes to the same in bodybuilding. You know, newer guys that are getting onto that pro circuit, like, yeah, you know what? You should be competing as often as possible, because you're still going to learn stuff at every contest. You know, I think people don't really realize how much effort, you know, these bodybuilders are putting out on stage when they're doing their routines.
Yeah.
And it's going to build up your conditioning and just make you feel better every time you step onto the stage. And that's just the way it is when you're competing in strongman as well. You get more comfortable, you get more confident, you have more fun. And typically with me, I find when I'm not putting so much pressure on myself at the show, I compete better. You know, that's when I won the Arnold Australia back in March of 2019. I had so much fun all weekend. I didn't go with the intention of winning. And the entire show, I was just having a good time, joking around. You know, obviously, you know, I'd be able to flip the switch when it was time to compete. But generally, I tried to keep as much pressure off me as possible. And that's what turned into me winning. And I did the same thing this past weekend with the log press, where I tried to stay calm, stay chill, just had fun. You know, honestly, I forgot that it was on ESPN when I was in the middle of the show, because there was just a few cameras in front of me, and I'm just hanging out with my buddies lifting a log.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing what you do in training.
That was my next question, is what's it like being on ESPN? Were you nervous? And I guess you answered it right there, that you didn't care.
No, I'm not even kidding. Like, I forgot. Until I was done with the final lift and I'm doing my interview with Poundstone, that's when it clicked. I was like, oh shit, this is live on ESPN. Because I'd be, you know, like, I'm kind of a sarcastic douche a lot of the time.
I was waiting for you to say something like kind of off color, let's say, on
Yeah,
ESPN. I'm like, he's gonna forget and he's gonna say something crazy.
I'm just glad I didn't.
Yeah.
Fuck up the one time I'm in ESPN live.
They're like, yeah, we're never having this guy back.
But like I wasn't really nervous. Like my biggest thing was I was focusing on this record and nothing else.
Yeah.
And that I think it was kind of nice being in a TV studio. There's just a few cameras, as opposed to being like in a competition setting, with everything else going on. So it was great. I was able to just focus on my lift, have a good time. And like I said, it wasn't until after I was done when I was being interviewed by Derek that I realized like, oh yeah, this is, who knows how many people are watching right now.
Yeah. Right. So I put something, not to jump totally off course, but I put up a call out on my Instagram yesterday to people, for questions or topics or whatever. And this is like way off the competition scene, but I feel like this is important to kind of address. And this is kind of the first long form introduction to, animal fans maybe that don't know you or aren't familiar with you to begin with. But I got a handful of really good questions. And, the first one is, and I'm going to leave the names anonymous just for the, for the person that wrote them in, because I don't know if they, understood that they would get their name called out or whatever. But I thought this was a good question. So somebody asked, directly to you, being a gay man, you're the first openly gay, strongman, pro strongman. Do you feel like having that as your background and who you are, do you feel like that helped drive you a little bit more than somebody that was just straight and didn't have to deal with the adversity of having that as your background? Like, I guess what this guy is trying to ask, I guess he's trying to ask if being gay was just an additional piece of adversity that led you to being the person that you are and the success that you have now.
For me, I came out a little bit later in life. I came out when I was 22,
Yeah.
and I was already a pro strongman at that point. I had already turned pro in the 105 class and the 231, lightweight division. So,
and you had you had world records as a lower weight class, right?
Yeah. I still have the log press world record in that weight class.
Yeah.
So I pressed 410 at a body weight of 231.
Whoa.
So for me, it wasn't really like adversity. I kind of had this mindset when I came out that if you don't like it, then go F yourself. I'm done with you.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all it was.
Yeah.
And what I quickly realized was it wasn't about me anymore after I had come out. And when I say that is, my story kind of went viral really quickly overnight. There was a story that was written about me being the first and only openly gay professional strongman in the world. And the next thing you know, I'm getting media inquiries from Huffington Post, TMZ, Conan is talking about me. It was just insane.
Yeah.
And what I found out quickly with that was it wasn't about me facing adversity. It was, how do I turn this into being a positive role model in the community? Yeah. And showing people that, your sexual orientation has nothing to do with how successful you can be, especially in a strength sport.
Yeah.
And for me, it wasn't, necessarily that it catapulted my career by coming out as gay, but it definitely gave me some extra motivation and put some more weight on my shoulders because I knew the bigger picture and the message I was trying to send. So I don't think it was ever negative. For me, it was more of like a positive motivator for me after coming out to see how I could change the landscape and the conversation of what people think gay really is.
Yeah. And like I've noticed this a couple of times, like you say, the only gay strongman. I'm not really, I'm a huge sports fan across all sports, and I don't know of any other gay athletes that are open about it. And you would know that there are, and they're just not out and open about it. So I think it's huge that you represent the community, because now there might be somebody that isn't as strong or comfortable in their sexuality right now, and they love to lift heavy weights, right? And maybe they love the Animal brand, and then they look at it and it's like, man, I don't know that I could ever either A, be myself, or B, ever have a chance to be sponsored by this company, because there's nobody out there that looks like me or represents me. So I think, what you're doing, being out and open like that, and, you're kind of setting these new marks and opening new doors for the community.
Yeah, I think that's something that, it's great that you touched upon it. That's so important, right? Like, I can't even tell you, like, obviously social media is wonderful and also horrible at the same time.
Yeah.
And I see both sides of the coin on a daily basis.
Yes.
Where, 1 minute I'll be getting a message from a teenage boy who's literally, this literally happened, that a teenage boy said, like, until I found your profile, I was going to commit suicide because I didn't know how to come to terms with my sexuality. And he's a 16-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Seeing me be successful and have an amazing relationship, that gave him hope and something to live for, which is out of this world, crazy, ridiculous. I never thought that I'd get stuff like that. On the other side of the coin, I get messages saying that I should just commit suicide because I'm an abomination to society and, yada, all that bullshit.
Yeah, it's a sin and all this other shit.
Yeah, so I think for me, and the big message is, a lot of people always say, like, oh, why do you have to be the world's strongest gay? Why is it such a big deal? And the reason it is because LGBTQ visibility is so important, especially in pro sports.
Yeah.
As gay men, like you said, like, there are no other real active gay men, especially in the major professional sports we have in the U.S. And, there's obviously open lesbian women who are fighting a great fight, but there's no men on the other side.
Yeah.
So for me, it really is just being that positive conduit to show people that even gay men can be professionally strong, be professional strongmen, pick up cars, pull planes, and do some crazy shit. And I think that's my biggest motivator, is to be that kind of role model for younger boys and girls and anybody in the US or the world, really. And just like show them that, like, hey, like, sexuality doesn't define the limitations that you can put on yourself. And, gay men can be strong and can do these amazing things, and they can have, kind of anything they want in the world. And I think that's something that we don't see a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's really important to me, is to be able to be that role model.
Yeah, it's great that you're able to show that. I feel like a big part in success in anything, like, I'm a big believer in, like, listening to podcasts or interviews with people that are an expert in their particular field, right? And a big thing I find with anybody that's really successful is that success, like, there's this phrase, like, success leaves clues. So, like, a big part of it is having someone go do it and show you kind of a blueprint to do it. And before you, there was really no one, so like you said, like, you're kind of just laying the groundwork for any gay athlete that may want to follow in your footsteps, or, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be within strongman. But it is kind of funny. And I know that you touched on this in your Rogan interview, where it's like, it's kind of ironic, like, you're in the most hyper masculine sport of them all. And, like, here you are, this gay man with a, rainbow mohawk and everything. It's awesome. But, going back to the point that, go ahead, Gary, go ahead.
I was saying that, especially in 2020, obviously, things are opening up a lot more. There's a lot more acceptance than there once was. Obviously, there's still a lot of adversity. But Rob is, like we said, one of the few, if not the only one off the top of my head that I could think of that's
I don't know
anything, at least in these lifting or physique sports, that I could think of off the top of my head, in a time that it's starting to open up a lot more. Bob Paris was openly gay, but I think that was decades ago. So while it was courageous that he was able to do that, at that time was a whole different ballgame in acceptance compared to today. So with Rob, you're definitely going to see probably a lot more people in the industry, make the announcement that they're coming out and stuff like that, because they feel comfortable. They know that they're probably not going to be. Most people aren't going to care. Like you said, some of the people in his DMs and everything like that, and a couple of the comments that we got on the announcement, but overall was positive. Some people are still holding on to hate. That's all learned behavior. That can be unlearned. With proper education and stuff like that they could go with it. But I think you're going to see a lot more athletes that have been hiding it for a long time come out, led by Rob's, him coming out.
And I hope that's the case. I think that would be absolutely amazing. And that's kind of, like I said, it's been my goal to show people to not be scared and really just embrace who you are. Because I will say, not being gay didn't propel my career. It was coming out that helped me propel my career, because of the fact that I didn't have to wake up every day and pretend to be somebody I wasn't.
Yeah.
I was able to finally just be my true self. I was happier than ever, and I didn't have to worry about anything else in the world. I was like, cool, now I don't have to like pretend to be this other person. I can finally just be me. And all that energy that I was using to do that, I just put into Strongman. And that's what helped me, kind of move my career forward.
I got another one for you, and I think that this would be important to, for this person at least, to hear your take on this. So this is someone that he's a gay young man, and he is still in the closet, and he wants to know if you have any advice for owning your sexuality in terms of like coming out to your parents first. So I guess his first step for him is coming out to his parents. So if you could go, like, if you have a little backstory or any advice as to how you did it, or what the case is with that.
I think the first step for anybody coming out is to be comfortable with it with themselves first. And that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with. And it was a big change for me too. I was in a relationship with a girl when I realized that wasn't what I liked.
Yeah.
And I needed to, kind of figure out and, find out what my life was missing. So after I had, ended that relationship and was going through things in life, I realized like, oh, wow, like, okay, I am gay.
Rob, for reference, for people that haven't heard you in other interviews, like how you were what, in college, and you were still and you were dating a girl? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That was, I call that my straight face.
Yeah.
So, for me, it was, I had to come to terms with my sexuality myself, because you grow up living this life where you're like, okay, I'm going to have a wife, I'm going to have kids, this is going to be what my life is like. And then it's like, oh shit, no, it's not.
Yeah.
And so that was a big thing for me too. And I actually didn't even come out to my parents until after Joey and I had started dating.
Wow, okay.
I met him, because I was living, up at school, and I was getting my master's degree at the time. So I wasn't living with my parents. And so I met Joey, and we had started going on dates and talking and stuff like that. And I realized how happy I was. And I was like, yep, okay, this is it. Definitely gay. We're going with this.
Yeah.
So for me, I had gotten to the point where I had realized how unhappy I was previously. And like I touched upon it before, waking up every day and realizing that you have to literally fake being yourself is exhausting.
Yeah. I can imagine.
I was always an outgoing, happy dude, but it was fake. On the surface, it was totally fake, and I was getting torn up inside. So after Joey and I had met and I had come to terms with my sexuality, that's when I realized, I was like, my happiness means more to me than anything else in the world. And that is relationship-wise with anybody in my life.
Yeah. Because
I realized in order for me to succeed, in order for me to be actually happy in life, I needed to, come out and be gay. And with me being 22, I was comfortable in where I was in life. So when I came out to my parents, I remember it, clear as day. I went down and I saw my mom first, sat her down in the kitchen, and I was telling her, and I was like, well, I have some news. And ironically, the first thing she said was, who's pregnant? I was like,
well, going in the other direction with this.
And so I was like, I'm gay, and I met a guy, and I'm so happy, and life is great. And, she was ecstatic for me. She was so happy for me. So that went really well.
Yeah.
I then went over to my dad's house, and I was nervous to tell him.
Yeah.
My dad is a stereotypical Irish Catholic man from Brooklyn, New York.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Like pretty hefty, just like kind of a hard ass.
Yeah.
So I didn't really know how it was going to go. And we were going to go out to lunch, and we're sitting in his truck, and I look at him. I was like, Dad, I have to tell you something, and I start crying, and, tears rolling down my face. And I'm like, I'm gay. And he pauses and he looks at me, he goes, so can I still say gay jokes? It's like, wait a minute. That's what you're concerned about? Like, so,
He's got a whole arsenal of them, I guess. They're that important.
I guess. I'm really fortunate, and I realize that.
Yeah.
But to this kid that is, kind of struggling with themselves and figuring themselves out, the biggest thing is realizing that once you do accept yourself for who you are and you can admit it to the world, then you're actually going to be able to experience real happiness. And I didn't think that was, I heard that prior to coming out. But when I lived it, it was a whole new world. It literally like opened my eyes to everything in life. And I think that's the most important thing that people need to realize is when you are finally able to live as your true self, not hiding behind barriers, it really just opens up the world to endless possibilities.
Yeah. But I will say a difference between you and this kid, it seems like, because this is a pretty young kid. So like, I couldn't imagine, with social, like, I've been out of high school for 10 years now at this point. Right. And high school was brutal. Like kids in high school are terrible to each other. And social media wasn't a third of what it is right now. So do you have any specific advice for a kid, let's say 16, 17, and dealing with on all these social media platforms with how terrible people are? And keep in mind at 16, like, I wasn't the most confident kid, and I didn't have to deal with any internal stuff like that. Like I was pretty secure in myself, with what I wanted and everything, but you're still a young, insecure kid. So I could only imagine that it would make it much more difficult for somebody like this, because like for you, you're already an established strongman, you're out of your parents' house. This kid might be living under their roof. You know what I mean? So anything that you could add to
he also sounds like maybe his parents, he's sure
nervous about it.
He's not sure on how his parents are going to go with it. Some people might be able to tell from the beginning that their parents are the type that no matter what, they're going to accept me. And then there might have parents that they might be more than confident that it might not go well, right. And this kid's probably like, well, now what the hell do I do?
The biggest thing for this situation,
and I know this is tough to kind of dump this on you because you don't know the kid or anything, but I just think it's so good for you to get, for you to answer it, because this, there might be 100 kids that hear this, and it could add some value to their situation. So,
and I dealt with this. I used to work in the boarding school world, so I lived with high school students on these campuses, and I have dealt with situations exactly like this.
Yeah.
And the most important thing you can do is you find a group of friends. You probably already have this, where no matter what happens in life, they're going to have your back. Yeah. And I still have those friends from high school as well. My husband still has those friends in high school. And, my husband, his story kind of aligns with this kid's a little bit, because my husband came out when he was 17 years old. Wow. And, he came out to his friends before he came out to anybody else.
Yeah.
Because he knew no matter what, those people are going to have his back. And I think you need some kind of support system with you at all times. And that's with students that I worked with in the past. It was the same situation where they had a few friends that they knew they could trust, they knew they could tell, and no matter what, they would be there with them. And I think that's so important, especially, I think high school is such a weird time where, obviously you're living at home, but you don't want to talk to your parents about everything because it's awkward. Yeah. Right. So like having that core group of friends are like, they're your people. They're the ones you can lean on. They're the ones that no matter what are going to stay there. They're going to have your back. So I think that's the most important thing, because they're also going to be ones, your friends most likely know your parents. They know your situation at home, and they can help give you guidance. Sometimes it's not an adult that's going to give you the best advice.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for people to realize, like, okay, you can go talk to a guidance counselor, but they're not going to have the experience and the knowledge that your friends have, that you've been friends with for such a long time. When we're looking at social media stuff, I think for me, I am a person that I use every negative comment as motivation. And a lot of people that are popular on social media, they have differing opinions on this. of whether to read through comments and read through messages and stuff like that. I will tell you, I read through every single comment on my posts.
Really?
I look at all the message requests I get. I read every single one of them. And I remember
wow,
the
you're
negative.
a killer. Jeez.
You know, it doesn't, the negative comments, they don't anger me.
Yeah.
They motivate me. Because to me, there's no bigger FU to that person that's talking down to me than me winning.
You just say fuck you. This is our own podcast. You can say fuck you.
You know, so like to me, it's like there's no, you know, okay, I could talk back to them. I could reply to their negative comments, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But that's not going to get under their skin like it is if they see me on top of the podium.
If they see you on ESPN with a big smile on your face after you just set a record kissing your husband.
Exactly. You know, so to me, that's the ultimate form of winning is doing that.
Hell yeah.
And that's why I read the negative comments. That's why I read the negative messages. Yeah, they're annoying, and I know they're dipshits behind a keyboard.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I use that in my training. I use it when I compete to motivate me. So, you know, to any kid that's listening who's struggling with their sexuality, who they might be out and they get negative comments, that is my biggest message to you, is to use that as fuel and motivate you. And it doesn't have to be in lifting. It can be whatever you want. If you're a musician, if you're an artist, you use that negativity that's being thrown at you, turn it into a positive to motivate you to become successful. Yeah. And that's something that I did over the last few years.
Yeah, man, it doesn't get more animal mentality than that. Like, you know, taking just people that are just, you know, being shitheads and rubbing it back in their face and succeeding.
Exactly.
You know?
And nothing pisses them off more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I'm actually getting a notification. We're getting kicked off Zoom. I guess we hit our time limit. And then I have to, you know, I have a work call, so I got to get off. I just want to thank you for coming on and taking the time. I know that you're in the middle of your workday too, so I really appreciate it. I think this was awesome. This is a great introduction of you to the animal fans that maybe were not familiar with you. I think, you know, you touched on a lot of great things that, you know, hopefully a lot of people hear and it provides them value to their situation. Gary, you got anything else for Big Rob?
I'm all good.
All right, man. Well, I really appreciate it. And until next time, animal fans, this was the Animal Pakcast. Rob Kearney, G6, Joseph Percher, and we're out.